Hello, this is Mike Van Meter. Welcome to the Recovery is Possible podcast, and I want to thank you for joining me. You can reach us at our Facebook site, which is also called Where Recovery is Possible, and our website, which is vanmeterwellnesssolutions.com. This podcast exists to educate the public about addiction, remove the stigma associated with addiction, and offer help and support to those suffering from addiction. So today we're going to be talking about suicide, the issue itself, and more importantly, how to get well from that. And I am so honored to have our guest tonight, Mark DiBona, and he is a retired police officer, and he's going to tell his story here and tell you a little bit more about himself. And as many of you know, I am a retired FBI agent, but I also spent 8 years in the Navy as an officer, and I was also a corrections officer and a police officer prior to that. So I have a deep affinity to the law enforcement community. Many of the issues that I experienced in my life and in my addiction, which we talk about on other episodes of this podcast, relate to that. And I came across Mark by actually looking for YouTube videos to support the work that I'm doing. And I was just really touched by his story and by what he went through and how he has really turned his life into helping others. And that's what it's all about. You know, this whole thing is about helping one another, and kind of the secret, and for those of you that are 12-step programmers and know the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson's great discovery, Bill Wilson's great contribution to mankind was the fact that he discovered that by helping other people that are suffering, he was able to help himself. And he was able to stay sober, whether they did or they didn't. It was that idea of getting out of yourself and helping others with their issues that helped you focus less on your own issues. And so what I discovered in meeting Mark and knowing one another is, he working in the area that I grew up in. I grew up in Pinellas County, Florida, and then went to the University of Florida. And so it's just kind of a coming home for me. And we're just sharing stories about my hometown. It's been a long, long time since I've been back down there, but I'm stuck up here in Washington, D.C., which is a great place to practice your recovery now, isn't it? So with that, Mark, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, Mike, first of all, I want to thank you, and I take this as an honor to be on your podcast, and this is just absolutely amazing. There's nothing more better than a brother reaching out to another brother and asking, hey, can you do this? Are you comfortable with this? And that if we can get the message out about suicide prevention and PTSD and mental health illness, whether you're in law enforcement or the general public, it's absolutely great. And thank you guys so much for having me on there. So like Mike said, my name is Mark DiBona. I was born and raised in Boston, and I now live in Florida. I started my law enforcement career in 1985. And this is kind of a dumb, silly story, but I was sworn in on June 6, 1985, which was a Friday. And if you look on the calendar, it's National Donut Day. So a little police humor there, and I love donuts. So, but if you told me on June 6, 1985, that you'll be on a podcast talking about a suicide attempt that happened to you in your personal life, I'd be like, first of all, what's a podcast? And second of all, no, absolutely not. Now we know in law enforcement we call it the dirty little secrets, and mental health illness is a secret that we just don't talk about. Or there is some agencies that address it fairly well, but unfortunately, for the most part, a lot of agencies don't address it. I did 8 years in Massachusetts, moved to Florida, worked for the Seminole County Sheriff's Office up till March 1st of 2019 when I retired. And I retired as a patrol sergeant. I absolutely loved being a cop. But I want you guys to hear one thing out. There's an expression that I use all the time. You may love the job, but the job doesn't love you. And you're going to see why I say that. And Mike, your example of that also. And I'm going to talk about it. But through my career, I was on patrol, traffic. I did some undercover work, did some investigative work. And it was a pretty good career. I did 19 years as a sergeant. I never tested further to go higher in rank because I loved being a frontline troop, and that's what it's all about. loved being a cop. For our first cops who are listening to this podcast right now, I commend you guys. I don't think I could do it right now in this day and age, what's going on with the riots and the defunding the police. And that obviously adds stress to to law enforcement. I was a member of the peer support unit in my agency. But I had a hard time getting on the peer support unit. We'll get to that a while also, and how difficult it was for me to get on the peer support unit when I'm an advocate for suicide prevention, and that's the politics of the job that goes with it. But it was a good run. I'm retired now, and I absolutely love retirement. I can't stress that enough.
Oh yeah, I retired this time last year as well, and I can't. I just love the fact that I have the freedom to do and say what I want to do now, and this podcast is a product of that. And and I really appreciate you coming and telling your story, and I know that this is going to touch somebody out there, and really, I know we don't want to say that the work that we do saves people's lives, because we never want to take credit for this kind of stuff. This is just what we need to do, but we know that it does. And you and I have seen a lot of death and destruction. And hey, and you know something, Mark, and I'll tell you, let me just share this with you, that when I was, the military you face the dangers that we're all familiar with. But when I got into corrections and police work, the danger was on the outside. I mean, you faced danger every single time you put on the uniform and went out on the streets. And that was very, very difficult. But I'll tell you, when I got into the FBI, and the reason why I'm mentioning this, because you mentioned politics in the office, the stress that I faced for nearly 21 years in the FBI actually had less to do with the danger that was outside the office, which was certainly there, don't get me wrong. But I can tell you that the stress and the trauma, and I'll even use that term, was actually inside the organization. And I will tell you that in a lot of ways, the politics that went on inside the organization made it more difficult, and I think led ultimately to my addiction, which we've covered in other episodes in this podcast, more than the actual dangers out on the street. And I think a lot of people forget that. And now the trauma, the added trauma of just the beating that the law enforcement profession in general is facing from the public, and that just really adds. And I don't think the public fully comprehends what that does to the psyche of a police officer. But all that trauma going on, Mark, if you would, could you kind of talk about what was going on in your life that led to bringing you here today?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, Mike, I agree with you 100% with the office politics and the internal trauma is killing officers. It's killing officers, and I'm going to get to that. So now it's about 12 years ago. I used to work in a very, very busy area, and I very much enjoyed it. I was a sergeant. I led by example. I was out there with the guys and girls, making arrests, writing tickets, whatever needed to be done. I was one of the troops. I led from the front. I didn't lead from the rear. Things were going great. Loved being a cop. I couldn't wait to get to work. But one thing I never got involved in was with the politics of the job. And I guess it hurt me career-wise, because I didn't jump on the bandwagon. I was never a suck-up. I never told the bosses, what they want to hear. If you want a question from me, you're going to get the answer, whether you like it or not. And I'm not going to apologize for that. That's just the type of person that I am. So a new lieutenant came in, and mind you, I was a sergeant. A new lieutenant comes in, the exact opposite of me. And what I mean by that was a huge sucked up to the command staff, hung out with the sheriff, hung out with the majors, the chief deputies. Just he followed them wherever they went, and his goal was how quick can I move up the ladder, and if that means kicking somebody in the crotch or sucking up to somebody, that's what he'll do. So we had a meeting when he comes in, and with all the other sergeants, and he's like, I'm the boss. This is the way it is, on and on and on. And I call these meetings bobble doll meetings. And what do you mean by bobble doll? If you look at a bobble doll, all the head does is shake up and down. So, and that's what everybody's doing when the boss talks. They shake up their head up and down. So when he got done, saying how great he was, on and on and on, I put my 2 cents worth in. I'm like, well, I disagree with you some things, Lieutenant. And he's like, I don't care. And I'm like, well, you need to care. So that obviously we started off on a negative foot right there. So it got to the point where he started bullying me. He would just pick on me, and like I'll give you an example. This may sound very minor, but believe it or not, it was huge in my life. I would do the daily report. Every sergeant had to do a daily report at the end of the shift, and I would do the daily report. And I didn't put a comma in something. My shift was 5:30 to 5:30, 5:30 to 5:30 My phone ring about 9 o'clock. My department phone. I'm reading the daily report, and you didn't put a comma in there. You need to change that now.
Oh, geez.
That means I had to get out of bed. Okay, and if we know anything about sleep, sleep is very important. You got to get your REM sleep, things like that, and that would really piss me off. It truly would piss me off. Well, then he became very degrading. Like he would say, you need to hammer this guy. A complaint would come in. He said, you need to hammer this deputy. He's an idiot. No, we don't need to hammer him. We can do progressive discipline. We can have I can sit down and talk with him. Will I put in his evaluation? I may not. It just depends. So I was always for the guys. I always defended the guys. Whether they were right or wrong, I always defended them. Well, that pissed him off even more. So he became insulting. As I said earlier, I'm from Boston. He'd say, where do you park your car? Things like that. I can take that. I'm a tough guy. I can take that. But when you get these belittling from your boss, it becomes an issue. And then he started attacking me. I was a public information officer for the agency, and that's something I really enjoyed doing, was talking to the media. And I had actually developed a good rapport with the media, and so I spent a lot of time on TV. Well, he wanted to be part of that, so he cut me out of it to put him on there. Now again, these don't sound like big deals, but they are when it comes to your career, something you enjoy doing. Well, it got to the point we started getting into arguments. To the point where one time he said to me, let's go out in the parking lot and sell this like men. My answer was, okay, let's do it. Obviously, we didn't go out in the parking lot because he hid behind his desk. He was a micromanager. He was a very irritating type person. So this led to, get into verbal arguments. Verbal arguments end up obviously get heated. And I said some things I probably shouldn't have said. Things like I'm not going to kiss your ass. I'm here to do a job. I'm here to take care of my people. But he started getting under my skin. He truly did. He started like denying training requests I put in. Started denying PTO requests, paid time off requests I put in. Things like that. And that was very frustrating. And So it got to the point where he started picking on me, like physically. I don't like your hairstyle. One of the things he did, which I can remember this like it was yesterday, I had a picture of my wife on my desk. My wife is absolutely beautiful, and I'm not bragging, but my wife's the most important thing in my life is my wife. I had a picture of her on my desk. He got 8x10 pictures of the sheriff, and he said, "Take your wife's picture off and put the sheriff's picture on your desk." I'm like, are you that insane? The answer is obviously no. I'm not going to do that. Well, now it came time for evaluation time. And I say this because I used to teach supervisor classes, or let me take that back, leadership classes, because there's a big difference between leadership and supervision.
Yeah.
So one of the things I used to say to new sergeants was, when you do an evaluation, when you hand that evaluation to the person you're giving it to, they should never be surprised in that evaluation. You should be prepared to have that difficult conversation in things like that. So my evaluation was in my mailbox with a Post-it note saying, if you want to talk about it, call my secretary and I'll make an appointment to talk to her about it. Well, my evaluation was below standards. And I got to brag for a minute, Mike. I was a damn good cop. I really was. I was good with the community. I believe it or not, I was good with the bad guys. I was a good cop, and I was a good sergeant. Obviously, I took that to heart. And in the evaluation, he wrote in it that he's recommended my termination or a bare minimum to be demoted.
Termination? For what?
Yeah. Insubordination. Because I didn't do what he was telling me to do. He would give me these daily tasks to do. And for the most part, I did them. Some of them I didn't do. Now, I'm not going to say it was all him. Some of it was me rebelling. Right. Because I'm an Italian from Boston. We don't put up with BS. At all. So I took that to heart. I really did, because I said to myself, I've only been a cop. I've been a cop since I was 21 years old. I really don't want to do nothing else, nor, in all honesty, know how to do anything else. I mean, I worked in restaurants. I pumped gas. I worked for a moving company, things like that. No disrespect to those people that do that job, but that's not what I wanted to do. I was a career cop. That was my goal. So that I took that to heart, and then I started thinking to myself, maybe I am worthless. And he used to call me worthless, but one of the things he used to call me was precious. He's like, "Hello, precious Sergeant DiBona." That's an insult, in my opinion. Okay, my name isn't Precious, but he would have that smirk on his face. Now I'm going to go back to my childhood for a second, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I was sexually abused when I was a child by a police officer. I grew up without a dad. The person that sexually abused me was an evil person. This went on for 7, 8 years. I never reported it. He would say things to me like, "You need to do this because I can get you. I played baseball, all through high school and little league and all that. I can get you as the starting first baseman. I can get you a job as a cop if you do this and you do that, on and on and on." And I took his physical and mental abuse. One of the things he said to me one time during one of the encounters with my abuser was, he called me precious. "You're my precious boy." When that lieutenant called me precious, that was a trigger. Honestly, Mike, I wanted to choke him out. I just, all I could envision was the person that sexually abused me, Richie, was his face on that lieutenant's body, if that makes any sense. Plus, again, he was a cop. So I saw the uniform, I saw the authority. That just triggered me to no end, to the point where I never in my life experienced a panic attack. I saw it from being on calls with people that had panic attacks or growing up seeing them, but I never had one myself. The chest pains, the sweat, the shaking, you feel like you're going out, you're just losing it. You're just losing it. And it was just a horrible feeling I had. So during the course of all this going on, I started thinking about the sexual abuse, and I started relating him as him abusing me emotionally, not physically, the lieutenant, but emotionally. So during the course of all this, the recommended termination or demotion, and one thing he said to me, he goes, I said to him, I said, "Well, what you're doing is you're singling me out, you're picking on me because I'm not one of your boys." He said to me, he looked back and he smirked and said, "Why don't you go ahead and complain on me?" Well, there's two reasons why. There's a reason why I don't complain, and you'll agree with me when I say is cops don't rat out other cops. We just don't do that. Okay, we just don't. That's something that a culture that we have. So of course, I'm not going to rat him out. But he said to me, "If you do rat me out, let me ask you this question: do you golf with the sheriff? Because I do." Wow. So what's that tell you? That tells me they're not going to listen to me again. Right. But I'm not a rat. So I started struggling with. I was starting to have nightmares about him, about my sexual abuser. I went to 9/11 5 days after the towers were hit, and I volunteered 2 weeks up there. I started getting flashbacks of that, of the smell of death that I experienced when I was at 9/11, the somber effects. I started, and then during the course of this time, I went to a vehicle fire, and it was on a major highway. And when I got there with another deputy, we tried to put the fire out with our fire extinguishers. We couldn't because the car was fully engulfed, and we could hear the guy screaming for us to save him, and he died. And that's trauma. That truly is trauma. I watched a person die. I don't tell this, like you said right at the beginning of the podcast, Mike. I don't tell these stories for pity. That's the last thing. I don't want pity. I just want, like you said, if somebody is struggling, somebody hears these things, hopefully we can lead them down the path of getting some help. So I started having thoughts about that. And then I started, I started getting on edge, and I started becoming very defensive to my wife. Like my wife would say something, I would just go off on her. And again, there's nothing in this world I love more than my wife, and that was not me. And it got to the point where she would say to me, "You need to get some help. You're stressing out at work. You got to get some help." We don't get help. That we're trained as cops. We're the helpers. We're not the helpees. And the last thing I wanted to do is the word to get out that Mark DiBona went to a therapist or a mental health professional, because now I'm going to be labeled as this person That's crazy. And I don't like using that word crazy, but that's the only way we can defy it right now. So during the course of this also, I was sitting at a fire station one night, and the fire department went out on a call. It's about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And they go out to call. I wave as they drive by, and I'm sitting in the driveway of the fire station. All of a sudden, this car comes in in 2 wheels, and I'm like, "What the hell is this?" And this woman jumps out. She hands me the baby. She's like, "I think my baby's not breathing. I'm on the way to the hospital." So I check the baby's pulse. No, there's no pulse. It's not breathing. That's excuse my French. That's a holy shit. You know. So I started doing CPR on the baby. I got on the radio. I said, I need the paramedics here now. It seemed like it took them forever to get there. And I know it didn't. I truly know it didn't. But doing CPR on a 3-month-old baby is just absolutely horrific. I'm doing CPR. I'm breathing in the mouth. The mom's yelling at me. And I get why she's yelling. I truly get that. So the paramedics get there. We put the baby in the back of the ambulance. I'm riding the ambulance with the baby. We get to the hospital. The doctors, nurses work on the baby. The baby died. Died. While I was in the emergency room, I was in the room when the doctor told the mom and dad that the baby died. The father looked at me and started screaming at me. "What do I pay you for? I can't believe you let my baby die." I'm like, "Sir, I did not let your baby die. Don't talk to me. Get the hell away from me." On and on and on. And so I drove off, and I started crying. And I said to myself, I wish he wasn't mad at me. And I know he wasn't mad at me. That was his stress of the moment. I don't have kids. I couldn't imagine losing a 3-month-old baby. I just couldn't imagine. I could not imagine that. So I said, we had a meeting, and I said in the meeting that I had a really bad call the other night. The baby died in my arms, and on and on and on. And the lieutenant looked at me and goes, "Precious, maybe if you knew how to do your job, that wouldn't have happened." I thought I honest to God, I thought I was going to pass out. But the rage in me, Mike, was I just wanted to go across that table. But I knew better not to go across that table. Now let's put this all together. Now I start having nightmares of the baby, explicit nightmares. That I go to my mailbox. I open my mailbox. There was the baby. By the way, as I went to the baby's funeral, and that was tough to do. Also, and the family could have been any more nicer to me. I mean, they were so nice to me. Once they realized that I did the best that I could do. I had nightmares of I would drive down the street, and I would look over my passenger seat of my cruiser, and I thought I'd see the baby sitting there. I would dream of my baby in my pool, the baby in the pool. And I'm like, what is going on with me? What are these nightmares? But I would wake up in a cold sweat. I'd be shaking. I'd start screaming. And my wife's like, "You've got to get help. You're struggling." That started causing some marriage issues to the point where I started sleeping in the spare bedroom or on the couch, because I didn't want to see my wife this way. Also, we talk about addictions, is that I truly believe I had an addiction during this, is I didn't turn to alcohol or drugs, I turned to food. And when I stressed out, which was all the time, I would eat, and eat. I would go to McDonald's, kind of the joke in police work, FHP, free at half price. McDonald's gave us free food, so where does every cop go? They go where the free food is. So that's definitely true. Any cop that's listening to this goes, "Yep, I can definitely understand what he's saying with that." So I would get 2 Big Macs, a triple fries, a milkshake. I would just eat. Then 5 minutes later, I go to Popeyes. I would just constantly eat Dairy Queen, and I wash it down with a Diet Coke, thinking, okay, no big deal. I gained 43 pounds in about 3 months. I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'1", but I got up to 280 pounds. And I looked in the mirror, Mike, and I said, I don't like what I see. I just see this person that I'm not, because I'm overweight. I have this look on my face of just distraught. The guys at work were saying, "Hey, Sarge, what's going on with you? Are you okay? Get away from me. Don't talk to me." So I became not a bully, but I became very standoffish to the people I worked with. And I was the exact opposite. I was the life of the party, joking around, all that stuff. But I started struggling. I felt myself struggle, and I really, truly did. One day I was driving to work, and he calls me, and he's just totally belittles me on the phone, just totally belittles me. And I hang up, and I have a panic attack while I'm driving. So I have to pull over. I pull over on the side of the road. I get out. I start throwing up. This car pulls in behind me, and this woman gets out, and she's in scrubs. And she's like, I'm a nurse. Can I help you? Can I help you? I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. She's like, no, you're having an issue here. She gets on the phone, calls 911. The fire department gets there. They check my blood pressure. It's 180 over 120. My heart rate's sky high. We're going to take you to the hospital. No, absolutely not. No way am I going to the hospital. So I sign out AMA against medical advice. I go to work that night. I'm absolutely miserable. I'm thinking about all the stuff that's going on in my head, the baby, my marriage issues. Am I going to be fired? Am I going to be demoted? What am I going to do? And but kept on ringing in my head was when he called me worthless. That just you're worthless to this agency. I'm going to make you the sergeant that the agency wants. That ain't going to happen. That truly. So I said to a couple of people during the course of all this, hey, this lieutenant, he's no good. And they're like, no, we don't want to get we don't want to get involved in that. He's one of the boys. We're not going to get involved in that. So I felt alone, really alone. So that night, I answered a couple of calls. Now it's about 11, 12 o'clock at night. I parked in an industrial park, and it just hit me like a brick wall. It really did. I started visualizing my abuser, Richie. I started visualizing the lieutenant. I started visualizing the baby. 9/11. I was hearing voices in my head, and I'm like, this is it. I can't take this anymore. I can't. I was raised Catholic. I don't practice Catholic religion anymore. That's for another topic, but I don't, I'm a Christian. I believe in God, and I'm very spiritual. So I prayed to God, and I felt, and I really hate to say this when I say this, but I felt God didn't answer me. And I know he did. I truly know he did, but either I was just too bullheaded or I just didn't accept what his answer was. So I started getting suicide thoughts, and I said to myself, oh my God, only people that they're losing it, die by suicide. And as much as I hate to say it, I would go to suicide calls and I would read the suicide note, and they'd say, I shot myself because I lost my job, or my wife left me, or something like that. And I'm like, really? You can't move on from that? That's what I would think to myself. Yeah. Now I'm in their shoes, and obviously my opinion is a lot different now. So I wrote a suicide note, and on the suicide note, the first page was to the agency, how much I hated how much I hated going to work, how much I hated them, and how much I hated that lieutenant. Flip the page over. On the second page was to my wife and to my mom. My mom was alive then. My mother since passed away. God rest her soul. Was please don't judge me. Please understand this is the only way I can get rid of the pain is by dying. And it's really weird what I did. What I did was I took the letter and I put it in one of those paper plastic holders, your paper protector holder type things. And I took some evidence tape out and I hung it off my rearview mirror. And here's why I did that. Because I said to myself, when I shoot myself, when the blood splatter, they're still going to be able to see the note. I thought like a cop. That because I wanted them to read that. No, which is weird to me. That's kind of weird, to be honest with you. Then I put in. I'm really into music, and I put in a CD, Guns N' Roses, "Welcome to the Jungle." "Welcome to the Jungle" is a really good rock song. It pumps you up. It's a good air guitar song, and I put that in there, and I started listening to it. Well, that's when I took my gun out, and I said, "Here we go." And I said another prayer to God was, "Please accept me into heaven. I'll be your protector. I'll work the front gate. Whatever needs to be done. But I want to go to heaven. I really do." So I put the gun in my mouth, and it was a very calming. To this day, I can still taste the oil in my mouth, the metal, the cold. And I put the gun in my mouth. I go, "Here we go. This is it. See you later." And I put my head back on the headrest, and I'm getting ready to squeeze the trigger. With my eyes closed, I could see a car come in. I could see headlights. Well, I opened my eyes up. It's another police car, another cruiser. And so I took my gun out of my mouth and I put it between my legs. And the deputy that pulled up, Craig McGee, we used to call him the Whopper, just a great guy. He looks at me, and my nickname is Bone, and he used to call me Sergeant Bone. He's like, "Sergeant Bone, what's going on?" And I go, "Nothing, Craig." He goes, "No, what is going on?" And I said, "Craig, I'm going to kill myself, and I want you to get the hell out of here. I'm your sergeant. You do as I tell you to do. Get out of here." He goes, "No, I am not going to leave you. Absolutely not. You're my brother. I love you. You're my brother. Well, that brought a tear down the side of my face. And he obviously talked me off the ledge. He did. One of the things he said to me, he goes, he would never call me Mark. He always called me Sergeant Bone. He said, I just can't call you Mark as a respect thing. That's fine. But he goes, Sergeant Bone, I want you to get some help. If you don't get help, I'm going to Baker Act you. In Florida, that's what we call the 3-day involuntary mental health order. We call it a Baker Act. I said, Craig, if you Baker Act me, you're screwing me. I'm going to lose my job. Because the stigma says if you seek help, you're a weak person. And agencies don't understand that. So I said, Craig, you can't do that to me, brother. You just can't. You can't do that to me. He goes, well, are you going to get help? I said, I'll get some help. So I called the watch commander that night and said, listen, I need to go home. Made up some BS story that I wasn't feeling good or something like that. I go home, I have a couple of beers, and now I'm sitting at my pool and I get the suicide thoughts again. And now my gun is now sitting on the table with my beer bottles. And I say, yep, now I'm definitely going to do it now. There's nobody here to stop me. My wife, we live in a 2-story home. My wife's up on the second floor, sound asleep. She doesn't even know I'm home. I'm going to do it. Then I started thinking to myself, yep. I started getting the courage up to do it. So I put the gun back in my mouth. But then I started thinking about my wife, that when she comes downstairs to go to work, when she sees the pool doors open, what's she going to see? Her husband laying there in a puddle of blood. That's going to cause her trauma. That's obviously going to cause issues. So I called a buddy of mine that is affiliated with the Boston Police Stress Unit, and I told him that I have suicide thoughts. He talked me into coming up to Boston. So I went up to Boston a day later. I called the patrol captain. I didn't call the lieutenant, and I lied. And I said, listen, but there's a crisis going on in my family right now, which in all reality, there is a crisis going on.
You.
So I went, me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a huge crisis, Well, like we say in Boston, that's a wicked crisis. So I go up to Boston, and I'm not gonna lie, it was very intimidating, extremely intimidating, because I lied. So listen, I got to go home and take care of some issues. He was great, no problem. Take all the time you need. We got you, on and on and on. Well, when I get to the Boston Police Stress Unit, I'm obviously talking to the professionals in there, and they gave me an option that either we're going to Baker Act you, or you can voluntarily go into a home for first responders and get some help. And I'm like, you don't understand that I'm going to be ruined. They're like, no, you're not going to be ruined. So I said, okay, I'll voluntarily go. So I go. Now, as we know, in any type of mental health facility, you get patted down, obviously, before you go back into to the facility. Understandably so, because you can't bring weapons in there or anything like that. Well, this guy comes out, and the only way to describe him, Mike, is he looked like Mr. T, a black guy with a mohawk, all the gold. The guy's about 6'8", muscles on top of muscles. I'm looking at him going, yeah, I'm going to listen to everything he has to say, because this is not going to turn out well for me if I don't, and again, I'm a big guy, I'm 6'1". So he says, hey, Mark, I'm going to pat you down. I'm like, oh yeah, man, no problem. Well, he goes to pat me down, and when he pats me down, I give him a 2-hand strike. I'm like, get your hands off me, man. Don't touch me. I went into police mode, and as we know, we don't let people get close to us. We don't let people touch us or anything like that. He's like, don't be like that. I'm like, don't you tell me what to do. And he's like, come on, man, I've been where you're at. No. I'm like, there is no way you've been where I'm at. I don't believe you. A guy looks, this guy, this muscles on top of muscles guy, that's why I volunteer at this place, because I want to help my brothers. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. He goes to pat me down again. I push him off again. He does some Chuck Norris, whatever move, and he puts me right on the floor, literally right on the floor. So they bring me back to the treatment facility. I have a panic attack and I have asthma. Now they have to call the fire department. They call the fire department. Fire department transports me now to an emergency room. While I'm in the back of the ambulance, I'm MFing the paramedics. And that's not me. I am such a happy-go-lucky guy. It's a side of me I never saw before. It was a demon, So we get to the emergency room, and one thing I learned, my wife's a registered nurse. One thing I learned in life was you don't piss off nurses. And so what's the first thing I did? I pissed off the ER nurse. Yeah, and I was I was so obnoxious to her. So she said to me, she was, Mark, a couple of things are going to happen here. Um, we need to get a blood and urine sample. You're not going to get that from me. I got nothing to hide, but you're not going to get that from me. We're going to do this easy way, or we're going to do it the hard way. Well, we're going to do it the hard way. Oh boy, she wasn't lying. I got the catheter. It was not pleasant. Oh my. Let me throw this disclaimer out.
I think I would have taken the easy way.
Looking back, we live and learn through life, and yeah, I definitely would take it easy. That sucked. There's no question about that. So now they put me. They put me in a facility, a med psych facility, not a first responder home, a hospital. So I'm very combative. They end up strapping me into the bed. Now I want every cop to hear me when I say this. If you don't hear a thing I'm saying in this during the whole podcast, I want you to think about this. Picture yourself as a cop with your wrists and your ankles in a restraint where you can't even scratch your nose. There goes all our power. There goes everything that we do as cops has been taken away. While I'm laying in that bed where I can't even scratch my nose, I'm just like, my life is a total disaster right now. Can it get any worse? In my opinion, no, it couldn't get any worse. Well, it did get worse. About 6 or 7 hours later, my mother comes in, and I was very, very close to my mom, and I said to my mom, I couldn't hug my mom, and that was heartbreaking. It really was. And I asked her to take the restraints off me, and she wouldn't, and I got mad at her because of that. So, long story short, I was discharged from the hospital and I went to the facility. But here's what I did at the facility, and you'll agree with me when I tell you this: cops are the best liars in the world, aren't we? We truly are. We can talk a dog off a meat wagon. It just we know what to say. So what did I do? I told them what they wanted to say. What they wanted to hear. Yeah. So now I sign out. I sign out. Now I'm going back to work. I go back to work. I'm absolutely miserable. I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off at the world. On and on and on and on. I went to one therapist to another. Didn't get any connection with the therapists. I was very, very upset. The bonus of the whole thing was I was transferred to a different lieutenant who was phenomenal. She really was. She truly was. But I was still struggling. So I go to a training class. And this is where I learned how the agency doesn't love you. So I went to a training class. But let me back up for a second. The word got out that I was committed. That cops rumors. I pulled my gun on the lieutenant. That's why I wasn't around for 3 weeks. I was on suspension. All these rumors. And I'm like, these are so far from the truth. But I never told anybody what I did. And so now I'm in a training class, and this guy comes in who's never been a cop. So I say that for a reason. He was a hack. They sent him to the academy. He got certified. They gave him a cushy job. Never spent a day on the road. He's talking. Now the training class was a supervisor class. Part of it was recognizing stress. I'm like, oh, well, I could definitely relate to that, And he's reading out of a book, and he's talking about nightmares. He's talking about this. I'm like, dude, you don't get this. You never spent a day on the road. You don't get the job-related stress. Then he's like, and this agency, if you're struggling, will back you 100%. I said, okay, let me take advantage of that.
Really?
So I raised my hand. I said, can I speak? He's like, absolutely. So I get up there. This is the first time I ever shared my story, and every word was F this, F the agency. You guys don't care. Because I was very angry, extremely angry, very, very angry. That led to a discipline. That led to a write-up in a meeting with the sheriff, which, I'll be honest with you, was not pleasant by any means. Not by any means. So I started doing presentations, talking to the media. Started doing presentations. My agency told me that you're not allowed to say who you work for. You're not gonna say you're a deputy. We're gonna make your PowerPoint for you. We're gonna tell you what to say to the media. Oh. No, absolutely not. No. And so I started doing presentations, and I spoke very angry. So what I learned from this was anger is not going to get you anything. It's not going to get you at all. Some they say the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Sure, yeah, it absolutely does. But people are going to listen to you more when you're more what's the word I'm looking for? More presentable. When you're able to speak like we're talking right now. We're not raising our voices. We're not getting excited or anything like that. So I came out with my struggles, and it was horrible. I mean, absolutely horrible. How command staff people were telling me, you can't talk about this. You can't do. We don't have those issues. One thing one of the captains said to me that really set me off was, "You're saying this story for pity. You're saying this so we can feel bad, so you can make lieutenant." I never took lieutenant test once in my whole career. And I didn't want to make them feel bad. I told the story so I could help others. So my present therapist said to me that you can't help anybody unless you get better.
It's true.
And she's 100%. If she's an ex-cop, she's 100%. 100%. She's 100% better. So I started changing my presentations to Mark DiBona talk, and not angry Mark, but the Mark DiBona that everybody knows, the guy that likes to joke around, the guy that makes fun of himself, makes fun of others, in a good way, of course, that uses humor, that uses real life things. I started teaching this at the academy, and changed my whole presentation around. And in my presentation, I make fun of myself. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. If you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? So things have got when I say 100% better, I mean truly 100%, because I recognize that I was this very angry person that just would not accept help. And through therapy, one thing, my therapist's name is Jamie. One thing Jamie said to me is, you have to remember one thing, Mark, there's things in life you can't control, such as the administration. And she goes, I'm not asking you to suck up to the administration. I'm just asking you to roll with it. And I said, but I said, roll with this. She goes, you can roll with it. They want you to do something, just put a smile on your face and do it. As long as it's not unethical or illegal, just do it. Absolutely do it. Well, I got a little poetic justice. This lieutenant ended up getting demoted to sergeant. So that was a little, that made me feel pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. And then shortly after that, he resigned because I personally think his ego got the best of him. And, because he used to say things to me like, you're only a sergeant. You don't get this. Well, a month ago, you were only a sergeant. So what I've learned is that through my experiences in life, that God only gives you so much that you can handle. So my goal now is to help my brothers and sisters, or anybody that is struggling with a mental health issue, suicide or suicide attempt. And I go around and I talk about my darkest times, but I also talk about my happy times. I was able to get my career back on track, where I started enjoying going to work again. But it's just so that the politics, like we talked about earlier, the politics, I just never could be involved in that. But I wanted to devote myself to more time with my organization, Blue H.E.L.P, and more time assisting people. So when it came time to retire, I retired. I got my 25, and I lasted 25 years in 1 month, and I got the heck out. And I feel, when I say 110% better, that's not even giving it some. I'm growing my hair out. I'm trying to do that rock and roll look with the long hair. That makes me happy. My marriage is back on track. These last years have been absolutely like we're honeymooners again. It just and this is because of my wife. Because she helped me get back on track. Also, she always had my back. She had my back, no doubt whatsoever. But I didn't like what I was providing her. This angry, mad, overweight, obnoxious person that she lived with. And she put up with that. She should get an award for that. Yeah. I was able to drop the weight, and I was able just to do things in life. Growing up in Boston, I'm a huge Red Sox fan. I stopped watching baseball during my struggles. I stopped listening to music. I stopped doing things that I enjoy. And then through my last couple of years on the job, and more so in my retirement, is I do things I enjoy doing. I have a pool. I love sitting by my pool and putting my Bose headphones on and cranking up some Motley Crue or Air Supply or whoever, whatever. And I love taking my dogs for a walk. I love spending time with my wife. I love having date night with my wife. Now the question I get is, do you get stressed out? Of course I do. Absolutely I do. But I've learned now that I'm not gonna be emotional from it. And what I mean by that is I'm not gonna go off the handle. I'm gonna deal with it as it comes along. Now, sometimes life throws you a curveball where you don't expect the curveball coming in, but you can handle this. You can. It was tough to go to work. I'm diagnosed with PTSD and depression and anxiety, and there was times I had panic attacks on my road to recovery. I had a panic attack about 6 months ago in my retirement, but I was able to talk myself out of the panic attack, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and I was pretty proud of myself, to be honest with you, by talking myself out of that panic attack. But I just do things now that enjoy, like my latest accomplishment was we were converting our living room. We have a small living room into my home office. I bought a desk online. I put the desk together. I put my pictures. I put my news. I put a picture of me on the job. I put a picture of my wife. Red Sox stuff. I put all this happy stuff around my desk. And that was
do you have a picture of the sheriff on the desk?
I do not. No, and don't ask for one. so I will say this: I have a picture of Trump on my desk. So and that's another story. But I felt in my later years that I was more of a value of helping people that are struggling instead of being this angry person.
Yeah.
And I always believed in the brotherhood. But one thing that really set me off was I put in for the peer support unit and I didn't get it. And I said to myself, "Oh my God, I was suicidal at one time. I can talk, and I didn't get it." The guy that ran the peer support unit was the guy I pissed off in the training class, and the one that actually recommended the discipline on me. So there's the office politics right there. I eventually got on the peer support unit, but I put in for it 3 times, and the third time I finally got it. I had people coming up to me at work, Mike, saying, "I went down the list of our peer support specialists. I'll never call them. I'll call you if I need something." I took that as a compliment. I really did. And since my retirement, I'm down to 215 pounds. I weighed, awesome. I'm pretty proud of myself. I weighed 258 pounds when I retired. I'm down to 215 pounds. I love life. I just really do. Next week, my wife and we talked about Pinellas County. We're going over to Treasure Island. We're going to spend 3 nights on Treasure Island. We absolutely love that area. We love going to the beach. So I do things that make me happy. Do I get triggered every once in a while? Sure. Yeah, absolutely I do. But I know how to recognize my triggers, and I know to do things for myself. And also, and one thing my wife said to me is, "I love what you do helping other people, but you've got to take care of your own mental health also." So when you're up at 2:00 in the morning sending emails out and doing this and doing that, just take a break. And things. She's right. She goes. She's 100% right. I still go to therapy. I'm on a maintenance plan now. I used going to therapy 3 times a week. My medication has lowered. I'm exercising more. I'm running. I'm working out. And it's really good. Life is just truly really good. And I just hope somebody can learn from my experiences. And again, I don't say this for pity. I don't say this, "Oh, poor Mark, that poor guy, look at the trauma he went through." No, absolutely not. If somebody's listening to this podcast and is saying, "Hey, I get that. I get the panic attacks. I get the bullying. I get the suicide thoughts, something like that, and I'm going to go get help, or how do I get help?" Then that's what we do. And if I could plug Blue H.E.L.P for a second, my organization, we have on our website, we have a link, and it's called First Help. You click on that and you put in basic information, and that will lead you to a mental health professional in your area that specializes with first responders. And I'm a big advocate for that. Your mental health professional should have some type of connection for first responders, because as we know, Mike, and I think you'll agree with me when I say this, every agency has EAP, Employee Assistance Program. Who's going to go to that? Not many people, because why? We believe Big Brother's looking over our shoulder. And but I do I hold resentment towards my old agency? Yeah, I do, absolutely. But I hold resentment, but that's a closed chapter in my life. Okay, when I drive down the street and I see a traffic stop, I say, "Oh, look at that!" if the cop was rolling on the ground, I'd be the first one to jump out and help that cop. Okay.
Oh, sure.
But I don't walk up to cops and say, hey, I'm a retired cop. And I'm Mark DiBona now. I'm the guy with all the tattoos now and the long hair, and longer hair, I should say, because I'm still trying to grow it out. But because as we know, Mike, and you'll agree with me when I say this, being any first responder, that's your identity. You watch cop shows. Who do you hang out with? You hang out with other cops. Who do you wear the cop T-shirts. You wear the cop baseball hat, or more so firefighters. And I'm not dumping on firefighters, but they wear a lot of that stuff. And but I've learned, and I love our firefighters. I'm not making fun of firefighters. I have close friends that are firefighters, and they come over my house and they're wearing a fire T-shirt. I'm like, really, bro? I got a Motley Crue T-shirt you can put on. Yeah, or and I wear shirts, and it's funny because I wear a lot of music shirts because music is a big part of my life and it's part of my happiness.
Yeah, me too. Actually,
yeah. So you can definitely relate to that, and so that T-shirt makes me happy. My going out for a run makes me happy. Spending time with my wife, that makes me happy. Walking my dogs, talking to my dogs, makes me happy. I look at life totally different right now. And I just hope your listeners can hear that there is life after the job, and there is life after your struggles. You can get better, but the only person that make you better is you. That's it. The other person that has to say, yes, I need to get help, or yes, I need to get this off my chest. And you're the only person that can do that. The greatest therapist in the world can get you to a point, but you have to accept that point and not self-medicate alcohol or drugs, food, or unhealthy coping skills. Those you can't do. You've got to do something positive in your life that will make you happy, and life is good. Life is really good, and I'm very much enjoying it. I truly am. I'm 56 years old. I plan to be around for a long, long time, and hopefully I will be. And I enjoy life. I really do. And this is my passion, as you can probably tell.
Yeah, well, I think you and I both. And I tell you, Mark, I mean, there is, and we could go on for hours talking about this, because there's just so much there in your story. And even though my struggle was with alcohol, I've often said this, that addiction is addiction. And I talk about that in other podcasts as well, that, what we all have in common is those addictions. And you mentioned food, and that absolutely is an addiction itself. It's a way of coping. And we talk about causes and conditions, meaning that's the physiological part, of the addiction. But the cause is what was it that drove it? And there's a lot that drives us to the point that we are at. And you talked about, and a lot of it's rooted in our childhood, to be honest with you. And you mentioned your story about, the sexual abuse and who that was from. And this was an authority figure in your life, and how that was represented later on with the lieutenant. But we all have that. And that's what recovery is all about. Recovery is, people always say, well, I'm going to go to AA, or I'm going to go to a 12-step meeting, and because that's going to get me to stop drinking. And actually the 12-step programs don't stop you from drinking. They don't get you to stop. They prevent you from starting drinking, because then when you start, then that's what creates the progression of addiction as we know it. But once you stop drinking or drugging or having any other issue, whether it's food or anything else, once you have put that into remission, then the key so the rest of the 12 steps is figuring out
absolutely.
And so the key to that is to figure out what's going on in our life, and then preventing that from creating those resentments in those dark spaces that want us to go back and start all over again with our particular addiction. And you figured that out, and you took the necessary steps of getting into therapy and getting help and working on others. And it seems like on your own, you discovered that thing that we talked about earlier. And that is that the secret to this whole thing is helping others help themselves. And by helping them, you ultimately help yourself. And you really hit on something. I'm telling you, you and I have so much in common. I mean, music. I have a very eclectic sense of of music and tastes and interests. Like you mentioned, like you can be listening to Motley Crue one minute and Air Supply the next minute. Now that's a pretty wide. That's a pretty wide thing. But I do the same thing as well. But you have your hobbies, whether it's working out, whether it's playing the guitar, listening to music, cars, whatever the case may be.
I'm working on that right now, Mike. It's funny you should say that. Trying to learn to play the guitar. And I love it. I totally love it.
Me too. I think you and I are like,
we're separated at birth, bro. there's no
Mark,
question
I think
about
you and I
it.
might even be the same person because we have so many interests. But we talk about in recovery and the listeners that are out there, you need to ask yourself, do you have what are called the Eustas? The Eustace. I used to do this. I used to do that. I used to fish. I used to play the guitar. I used to go to the movie, whatever. The Eustace. I used to do that. And now you're not doing it anymore. And a lot of times it's because we are so wrapped up in our addiction. We are so wrapped up in our job, which is also can be another form of addiction. I know some people that are affected by that. And the problem with that, particularly in law enforcement, but I'll tell you, it's not just law enforcement. It can be any job that's out there is, you and I both know now that we're retired, because I think it's clearer to me now that I'm retired, and I'm sure it is the same with you, is how much of my damn identity of who I am was wrapped up in the fact that I was an FBI agent. It was my life. It was my soul. It was everything. And
bro, I can relate to that 100%. Yeah.
And I get that. But the problem is, and I think for a lot of people that are listening here, is we are so, particularly now with COVID-19 going on and people losing their jobs and getting laid off. And I think every night about the people that are, have lost whatever their thing was that they were doing working wise. And now it was taken from them because of all the layoffs and the different things that are going on right now. And I really worry about them. And my message to people is this, that your identity cannot be wrapped up in your profession. Because look, I did not come into this world as an FBI agent, and I am not going to be leaving this world as an FBI agent.
Amen, brother.
And the fact is my wife we've been married this year 31 years, and you've been married a long time. And I, along with you, I owe my life to my wife. And I remember one time in one of my little pity parties at the height of my addiction, my wife actually saying, and I was talking about the FBI, and I was lamenting and talking about the politics and talking about how shitty it can be at times and how nasty people can be. And my wife actually said to me, I met you when you were 19 years old. You didn't have 2 dimes to your name. You didn't have a car that ran. You had no money. You had nothing. And I loved you then. And she goes, why the hell do you think I love you anymore because you're an FBI agent now? She goes, I had no idea that's what you were going to go into. And by the way, later in our years, you'll have nothing to do with the FBI. I don't give a damn about the FBI. And I really wish you'd stop caring about it. You need to take care of yourself and know that I love you and know that we have a future. You are a human being, and it's that's soul huge. You need to take care of.
That's huge. Yeah,
and it's true, but it's true.
Oh, it's like I said earlier, Mike. The job you may love the job, but the job doesn't love you.
And let me ask you this, Mark. So, and I listen. When I could go back to my old office right now, and walk into that office, and I bet you over half the people in there wouldn't even know who I am.
Oh yeah,
they wouldn't even know who I was.
Yep.
That's how important you are. And not just in any organization. You leave and 2 weeks later, never heard of you. That's how important you are. And you always have to remember that it's you have to take care of yourself. And something else that you mentioned that really touched a nerve with me is that you've got to get, I know in the addiction world, I did not get well. I did not get sober until I wanted to get sober. There were a lot of people that were telling me that I needed to get sober. There were a lot of people telling me what I needed to do. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, it was a long road for me, but it wasn't until I sat down and said, okay, I've had enough. And there's 2 options, live or die. Because if I'd have continued with my drinking, I'd be dead right now. There's no doubt about it. Now, but nobody as well-intentioned as they were, and there were a lot of very well-intentioned people in my life, but it didn't matter until I decided myself that I wanted to get help and then did what I needed to do and took the steps to get sober. And today, the only thing that keeps me sober, and we all, like you mentioned, we all go through tough times even now. In your life, you go through tough times. In my life, as we speak, I am going through tough times, but I don't go back and drink over it because I've learned recovery. I've learned the importance of my maintenance and the tools that I have now that I have to break out of my toolbox. And it sounds like you have a lot of tools that you're utilizing to not go back to that dark place.
Because there's a better place. That's why, in all honesty, the easy way is probably to go to the dark place. That's just the path of least resistance. Okay.
Yeah.
But we're both in the same mindset that we're not going to do that. Absolutely, we're not going back. We're not going to the used to. Okay, we're not going to do that. It's not a closed chapter in our lives by any means, because I'm sure you think of it every single day like I do. But it's just okay. I've learned from that, and I became a better person because of that.
Yeah.
So sometimes something bad in your life actually turns out to be something rewarding long term. If that makes any sense.
That's right.
It really does.
You do the next right thing. You take the next step forward. And I think too often we look at these things that happen in our life as being the end, when sometimes they are actually the beginning. And we worry. One time I heard this, Mark, that over 95% of the things that we worry about happening in our lives actually don't happen. And like you, here's another thing that you had that's similar to my path, is when I got help and I went to treatment, because I did go to treatment, I thought my career was over. I was convinced that my career was over. In fact, that did not happen. And one could argue that me having gone through treatment and really kind of being open about my recovery opened some doors, because I was blessed with being given the opportunity to help other employees and you and I are sitting here right now talking on this podcast about it.
Right.
And think of the opportunities that this is doing for you and I to help other people. Well, we wouldn't be here doing this if it wasn't the experiences. And so if there's anybody out there listening right now, your life is just beginning, and it will be 100% better than where your life is at right now. And you just have to understand that as long as you're on the right path, you're doing the next right thing. You may not be happy with everything that comes your way, but everything that comes your way will be important. And it is useful as long as you're helping other people. I believe God has a plan for our life. That's just what I believe.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100% with you on that. Absolutely.
But that's God's plan. And what God's plan for my life is not my business. But my job is just to do what I'm called to do. And that is helping other people. But if you're listening right now and you're struggling, please call the number that Mark talked about. Get that help. It will not be the end of your life. It will open doors. And I'll tell you, the toughest group to work with are cops and agents that I work with, because we are trained to never give up, to never admit wrong, not admit wrong. That's not the right word, but to admit weakness. How about that? We are trained to not admit weakness.
Yeah. Yep.
But this is not a weakness.
No, not at all. This is the cause you're dealing with right now. And it's not, and I love when you say that. It's definitely not a weakness. It's an unfortunate thing that's going on right now, and you're not a weak person for identifying it, but you're going to be the strong person to get rid of it, or not to, not get rid of it, to fight it. That's what it is. And as cops, we're trained to be warriors. We're trained to fight. So let's take some of that build up adrenaline that we have inside us. It's like when you go to arrest somebody, you're a little pumped up and something like that. Well, let's use that energy to help yourself. And if you could can some of that energy, you're doing pretty good, really good, actually.
Yeah. So, Mark, I really do appreciate you being with us tonight and sharing your story with us and your information. And can you give us one more time the website and the information that you gave earlier, just in case somebody would like to call in?
Absolutely. It's bluehelp.org, bluehelp.org. That's our main website page. On there, if you click on resources, you'll see First Help. And when you click on that, that's when you'll be able to put your information. And I will tell you this, because I know people are going to be skeptical. Oh my God, I'm going to type in some information. Someone's going to be knocking at my door. My job's going to find out. They're not going to find out. It's confidential. Okay.
Yeah.
And so First Help is it sounded a little cliche. It's helped a lot of people. It really has. And we have a database of, I think, about 250, I'm guessing, mental health providers, sleep. I actually just spoke to a person a couple weeks ago about, he's a sleep specialist, and we put him on there. And that guy was phenomenal, talking about sleep in the first responder world. I've never heard anybody talk about that, how important that is. So, that's the link. And there's also Cop Line. There's Back the Blue. There's a lot of support lines. But I will say to my brothers and sisters, and this includes everybody, if you're struggling, any help is good help.
Absolutely.
And I will say this also. I use this line all the time, and it's I would like to trademark it, but somebody stole it. It's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that line. I really do.
And that is so true. It's so true. And you'll get through this. You will. You're going to have your peaks and you're going to have your valleys. But Mike, we're living proof that we can get through it.
Absolutely.
We really are, and we're not the only ones. So we're not the only ones. And it's such a good feeling, like you said, helping others. It's a natural high. It really is.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'll just go ahead and close this out with this. And again, if you need help, reach out to those resources. And we really appreciate you joining us tonight. And, if we said something that does not apply to you or you don't agree with, then just discard it. But try to take any information that you can use for yourself and help others as well. That's what we do here in recovery. And we help ourselves along the way, too. And we'd like to impart that knowledge that we've gained to others as well. And with that, please visit our Facebook page, which is Recovery is Possible, and our website, which is VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. And let me know how I'm doing, and let me know if there's a topic you're interested in hearing about. I'd love to hear from you. And take care. And Mark DiBona, thanks again for joining us, and we will be talking with you all soon. Thank you, and good night.